Hey everybody, I'm Jack Rita. I'm a designer on expansions for the classic Dune board game. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about a power alliance in Dune that I call the Manipulators. And that is an alliance that exists between the Bene Gesserit and the Ixian faction. And it's called the Manipulators because the manipulations that each of these factions can do in the game is at the heart of what makes this a powerful alliance. So let's take a closer look at how they do their manipulating and why it is so effective. Now we're going to start with the obvious. With the Bene Gesserit, you have the voice, and the voice is arguably the most powerful advantage in the game. Certain other circumstances, other advantages become more powerful, but for bang for the buck, the voice is a great advantage. And it's one that the Bene Gesserit get to use when they're in battles, and their ally also gets to benefit from it when they are in battles. And the way it works is the Bene Gesserit tells their opponent, or the Ixian's opponent, in the case of the Alliance, when making battle plans, a particular card or type of card that cannot or must be in that player's battle plan. So, for example, as the Bene Gesserit, you could tell your opponent, you cannot play a projectile weapon in this battle. And if that player was planning to use one, they're just forbidden from doing so. Or they could say, you must play a poison defense. And if they have one, they have to play it. This lets them, generally speaking, either protect their own leader or almost guarantee that they can kill the opposing leader. And so that is going to be very important for winning your battles, especially with the Bene Gesserit. All of their leaders are strength 5, so they have an edge on the other factions, and speaking in averages. So this is a very effective advantage, and it makes the Bene Gesserit a very attractive ally for any faction. Now, the Ixians, their manipulation is a little bit different. It has to do with treachery cards, but you can see right away how that is going to definitely be a factor for the Bene Gesserit. And that has to do with their bidding advantage. They get to see all of the cards that are going to be up for bid in that auction phase, but they also get to draw an extra card and then choose one of those cards to suppress. They put it on top of the deck or at the bottom of the deck. So there's a couple of really important things that the Ixian faction can do, especially when they're allied to the Bene Gesserit. When you draw those cards and you're looking at them, and you can share that information with your ally, a lot of times when the Ixians are using their bidding advantage, if they've drawn 2 or more worthless cards, they have a choice there where they either keep all of them in and then just maybe avoid bidding on anything that round, which is okay for making the other factions get stuck with a worthless card, but they're not all going to be worthless cards. So a lot of times what happens is there's a couple of good cards in there too, which the Ixians don't necessarily want to see other people get. But sometimes if they're going to put 3 worthless cards into an auction of 5 or 6 cards, it's really not worth the Ixians risking ending up with one of those cards. But the alternative is that they suppress the worthless cards so that there's better cards overall, increasing their chances of getting a good card. But that too means that other factions are also going to get good cards. That changes with the Bene Gesserit in there because, especially in Advance, and I'm mostly focused on Advance with these Power Alliance videos if you hadn't already noticed by now. But in Advance, the Bene Gesserit can use worthless cards as Kurama, and that is very powerful indeed. So when you have this situation where you've got a couple of worthless cards, or even just one worthless card, you want to leave that card in and suppress the other good cards. In fact, what you want to do is take the best card and put it on top of the deck. Take it out of the auction altogether, put it on top of the deck, and then you're helping the Bene Gesserit to be able to buy a card, because now you've increased the chances that they're going to get a worthless card, which is going to be very powerful for them indeed. But if they do get a card that they don't want, the alliance advantage that the Ixians give their ally is that after that ally buys a card and sees what it is, they can just immediately discard it and take the top card of the treachery deck, which you have top-loaded with what you both agree is the best card for them to get. So that manipulation can be very effective If you get the Bene Gesserit with a lot of worthless cards or Kurama cards in general, that means that you've got the option of half-priced shipping. You can buy a card for free. You can stop other factions with their advantages. So there's a lot of versatility in there, and you really want to arm the Bene Gesserit with those things. So that is really central to helping them get out. Now, when the Ixians end up buying a card that they don't want, so let's say they're like, all right, I'm going to get a card too, but they put a lot of worthless cards in there. They do have a little bit of a parachute, and that is with their technology advantage. So after they have bought a card that they don't want, or let's say they already have one in their hand, they can use technology once during a bidding round, and they can take the next card that's up for bid and then put a card from their hand up for bid in its place. So this lets them, usually what you're doing is you've bought a card that you don't want, and then you immediately put it back up for sale, and you take the next card up instead. It might also be a worthless card, so there's a little bit of a gamble there, but you do at least have one chance in each bidding round to unload something from your hand and then just take one of the next cards that's up there. So the Ixians have some power with manipulating the treachery deck, and to benefit themselves and to benefit their ally even more, especially in this case with the Bene Gesserit. Now there's other important elements, of course. The Ixians are a powerful faction with their cyborgs and their suboids. The cyborgs are double strength, so even in basic, so that is a good combat element that you can have in there, especially if they can spy style those forces. And when they are in a battle with cyborgs and suboids, they want to try to dial the cyborgs and have suboids left over, because the suboids can then absorb the losses. So for each suboid that survives a battle that the Ixians have won, they can send that one to the tanks in lieu of a cyborg that was going to the tanks and keep the cyborgs out. They don't have revival limitations with their cyborgs, which are their starred troops. So they, unlike the Fedaykin and the Sardaukar, where those factions are limited to one revival per game turn of a starred force, the Ixians can revive 3 of them if they want, but they're more expensive to revive. So they want to try to save their money where they can. Now, the Bene Gesserit, they've got the spiritual advisors, which allows them to cheaply get some extra forces onto the planet, and it allows them to bring forces in advance into strongholds where their enemies are as advisors until maybe they've stockpiled a few or they're ready to strike. So if they've got an advisor in Arakeen, they don't have ornithopters, but in a subsequent game turn before the shipping and movement phase, they can flip those advisors to fighters, and now they do have ornithopters. And if they've been piling up forces in the polar sink, those forces can get to 4 of the strongholds now, which lets them strike in strength. They can also send advisors to the hidden mobile stronghold that the Ixians control. They can't ship directly, but when the Ixians ship into the HMS, Bene Gesserit can bring advisors along there as well. It depends on which implementation of the FAQ you're wanting, but we play that the advisors, they just don't count as being on the board for virtually any game effect. So yes, the advisors can be in the stronghold with their ally, but we also don't do the Nova flipping. So if they are advisors, by the time you get to the battle phase, they will remain advisors for the rest of the round. They don't just flip after their ally has full dialed so that they can be like, look, we're still in the stronghold. That is not how we play it, and the upcoming FAQ will reflect that as yet another ping-pong back and forth into how to truly implement the Bene Gesserit in a way that makes sense, is easy to do, and is ultimately fair. So with all that in mind, there's certainly other things that come into play. Neither one of these is an economic faction, so they're being frugal, but the manipulation helps them to stack the deck. And they can say things like, yeah, we managed to put several worthless cards in there. So if that's what you guys want to buy, go ahead and knock yourselves out. You spending your spice on worthless cards is fine. If they end up getting them, that's fine. But you're ultimately trying to get those into the hands of the Bene Gesserit so that they're better armed, and maybe they can use one. They've got to pick a couple of those worthless cards. They could use them on another round when you have put a lot of good cards into the bidding phase, so that they can just use those Kuramas to get free cards. And then a Bene Gesserit with a weapon and a defense is very tough to beat. So there you have it. Let me know if you have any questions about the Manipulator Alliance. And if you've seen it in action, let us hear your stories. How effective were they? The Ixian faction is usually a strong early, not so strong later. Bene Gesserit are usually stronger later as they've gotten more and more of their forces. So that's a nice little yin-yang action there. But if the Ixians are smart and they don't go for it too early, losing a lot of their forces and their good cards, then they will be very powerful throughout the game. If they're playing smart and a little bit conservative and cautious, that is usually your best bet. It's hard to get the super early win unless you've got great card knowledge about, all right, I've got this weapon that nobody can stop, and nobody else has a way to kill my leaders. Those stars don't align all that often. So while they do occasionally can pull off an early turn 1, turn 2 victory, a lot of times I've seen them go for it too early, and then they're devastated, and they're running to just try to catch up. So play smart, and think about trying to get yourself into an alliance with the Bene Gesserit, so that you guys can really load for bear and then boom, go in and win that game. That's it for this one, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will